Go to bed, now. My drunk father roared, slamming the door. He stumbled towards the kitchen where his equally, if not more, intoxicated friends were waiting. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I turned to face the wall and cried, not because my father drank every day, yelled at me, and sometimes even hit me. I cried because I was left alone in the dark room with the terrifying entity that had recently taken up residence in my closet. It all started about 2 weeks ago. I was awakened in the middle of the night by the creak of the closet door. In the dead of night, the sound was especially loud, even frightening. When I woke up, I immediately looked at the window and, to my surprise, it was closed. There was no draft, but that wasn't what scared me. It was the small key for that very door lying on the floor near the closet. In the corner of my small room stood an old, lacquered wardrobe, a family heirloom from my grandmother. Each of its doors locked with a small key. If you didn't lock it, the door wouldn't stay shut and would swing open with a characteristic creak. That's why the doors always had to be locked. But that night, it had opened by itself, and the key was on the floor. I didn't want to wake my father, who was passed out drunk in the kitchen. He had been in a foul mood earlier, yelling at me for forgetting to wash my cup. I hated him. That night, I sat huddled under the blanket, only occasionally peeking at the open closet through the small gap between the blanket and the bed. I only managed to fall asleep towards morning, probably out of sheer exhaustion. My father overslept and didn't wake me up for school, so I missed my first 2 classes and got an earful from him when I got home. The smell of alcohol seemed to be permanently etched into the walls. It was as if my father never sobered up. My mother was the same, but at least she didn't hit or scream at me. Sometimes she even defended me from his drunken rages. They fought often, and he would raise his hand to her just as he did to me. To this day, I don't understand why she put up with it. It was probably because of the apartment, it was entirely in his name. Calling the place I lived a home was a stretch. Piles of trash that hadn't been taken out in weeks, empty bottles, no hot water, peeling wallpaper, cockroaches, and many other delightful things. At least I had my own room, which I tried to keep clean and tidy. My parents rarely came in, they couldn't have cared less about me. I was just an ordinary kid who hated school, loved soccer, and hanging out with friends. I was 9, almost 10, when the strange things with the closet began. It didn't stop with the door simply opening. The nightmare was just getting started. The next night, I was lucky enough to sleep until morning. But when I woke up for school, the closet was open, just like the night before, with the key lying on the floor. I got out of bed, trying to dismiss any thoughts of some monster living in my closet. I pulled the door wide open and peered inside. In the morning, with the sun streaming through the window, I was brave. There was nothing inside but my old toys, my school uniform, and other junk. I even considered that maybe my parents had come in looking for something. But what could they possibly need from my closet? It only contained my clothes and toys. I cleaned it out every Sunday and could say with certainty that only my things were behind those doors. Besides, my dad knew perfectly well that the door wouldn't stay closed unless you turned the key. If he had needed something, he would have closed it behind him. Then again, who knows? By evening, he could usually barely stand on his own 2 feet, let alone worry about closing closet doors. I didn't say anything to my parents. I just silently locked the door and got ready for school. As I left my room, I was met by my father. Judging by his appearance, he was hungover, a common occurrence. "What were you doing last night?" he grumbled disapprovingly. "I was sleeping, Dad," I replied. "What are you, a damn sleepwalker? What the hell were you doing with the closet?" "I didn't do anything, Dad. I was sleeping." My father raised his voice again, and I got scared. Thankfully, my mother quickly calmed him down, and I slipped out of the apartment and headed to school. School subjects, classmates, and teachers distracted me from my problems at home. There were even times when I simply didn't want to go home, trying to stay at school as long as possible or hang out with friends. But the ring of the push-button Motorola in my pocket would cut the fun short. Hearing my father's voice on the other end, I had to drop everything and run home. The longer I took, the worse the punishment. I was used to it, though. I didn't even cry anymore when he yelled at me. I would just clench my teeth and listen, my eyes fixed on the floor. The following night, the closet door announced itself again with that irritating creak, breaking the silence of the night. I immediately opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, trying to see what was happening out of the corner of my eye without moving my head. The closet door was opening slowly, as if someone inside had gently pushed it. Then, the sound of the key falling onto the wooden floor echoed through the room. From the next room, I heard some rustling and thought my father had woken up and was about to come in. I quickly turned to the wall and pretended to be asleep, but no one entered. It seemed my dad had just turned over in his bed. I lay there for a few more minutes. All sleepiness had vanished, and my mind started to paint terrifying images in the closet. Goosebumps ran down my spine, and the beating of my small heart was clearly audible in the nightly silence. Suddenly, the second door also began to open slowly, accompanied by the same ear-splitting creak. I buried my face in my pillow and held my breath. Then I heard a footstep, then another, slow, shuffling steps. The old floorboards creaked with each step. But who was it? No one had come into the room. The steps slowly approached me. At that moment, the unbearable terror almost made my heart leap out of my chest. I felt the sheet beneath me start to get wet. Again, from the next room, I heard the creaking of a bed and my mother's sleepy mumbling. In that instant, the feeling of a foreign presence vanished, as if no one had been there at all. But I still lay in my wet bed, afraid to even breathe. I fell asleep like that and didn't wake until my mom shook me. Thank God my father was still asleep. I didn't see him that morning. At breakfast, I decided to tell my mom what had been happening in my room at night. She had already noticed something was wrong with me. I heard a noise from your room. What were you doing in there? It wasn't me, I wailed. Dad heard it too and yelled at me. Then who was it? You're alone in the room. I'm not alone, I whispered, looking down. There's someone in our closet. Oh really? She said, surprised. And who might that be? I don't know, Mom, but it's him. He somehow opens the doors. I'm scared, Mom. And last night, I heard someone come out of the closet. Are you out of your mind, son? She said with a smile. I wasn't surprised by her reaction. Come on, let's go have a look. But he only comes out at night, Mom. We went into my room, and my mom threw open the closet. See? There's no one here. Maybe you dreamed it. No, Mom, I saw him. Wait a minute, what's that spot on the bed? I silently lowered my eyes to the floor. Just then, my swaying father appeared in the doorway. He smirked, realizing I had wet the bed, ready to make a sarcastic comment. But he had other things on his mind. He went to the kitchen and chugged a whole mug of water. I didn't try to prove anything else to my parents. I got dressed and escaped to school. The nighttime apparition wouldn't leave my mind, so there was no question of studying. I brought home a bad grade and had to tear the page out of my grade book. Otherwise, such incidents ended very badly for me. That evening, as usual, there was a celebration at home. I didn't know the occasion, but my drunk father was sitting in the kitchen. My mother was cooking something at the stove, and two of my dad's friends were there. The whole apartment was filled with noise. When I came in, no one even noticed me. It was probably for the best. I slipped into my room unnoticed and dealt with my gradebook. No bad grade there, but it was in the teacher's journal and needed to be fixed. Dad was more drunk than ever tonight. The cheerful, drunken conversations in the kitchen turned into a scandal, and then a fight. Thank God no one got seriously hurt. I didn't interfere in adult matters, as I could easily get caught in the crossfire. It was getting dark outside. I had already done my homework, and my only entertainment was a book. Sometimes I played on my phone, but there were only 3 games on it, and I got tired of them quickly. I was afraid to go to sleep that evening, afraid that the thing would crawl out of the closet again and this time, it would get me. So I sat at my desk until late at night, until the door to my room opened and my staggering father appeared. Go to bed, now. But I don't want to yet, Dad. What did I say? Get in bed, now, he said, raising his voice. I obediently made my bed, went to the bathroom to wash up, and got in. My father slammed the light switch, and the room plunged into darkness. I lay there, my eyes glued to the closet, naively thinking that if I watched it, nothing would happen. Finally, when darkness and silence fell over the entire apartment, the creak of the closet door cut through the air again. I immediately shut my eyes and pressed myself into the pillow. Again, the clink of the key on the floor, but it didn't go any further than that. I didn't hear any footsteps, no shuffling, nothing of the sort. Instead, I heard something fall in the kitchen, a plate or a cup, something shattered. Immediately, from the next room, I heard the creak of a bed and footsteps towards the kitchen. The light in the hallway came on. Judging by the heavy steps, my father had woken up. He wasn't in the kitchen for long, and soon I heard footsteps coming back. The door to my room opened, and the light from the hallway flooded in. I didn't have time to react, and my father saw that I wasn't asleep. "Go to bed, now," he grumbled, as if under a hypnotic spell. "Dad, I'm scared," I sobbed, unable to hold it in any longer. "There's someone in the closet, Dad. He opens the door every night." "Are you completely crazy?" My father came into the room and looked at the closet. "There's no one here. You'd better tell me why you went to the kitchen, you little expletive," he fumed. "I didn't go anywhere, Dad. I was right here, I swear." "So you're trying to tell me that the plate just decided to fall off the table and break all by itself?" "It was him. The one in the closet. It was all him, Dad." "Stop talking nonsense, you idiot. Are you in your right mind?" His outrage woke up my mother. "What's going on here?" she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "Our son is a expletive sleepwalker." "I'm not a sleepwalker," I cried. "He's telling me there's someone living in our closet. Is that normal? These creaks are driving me, expletive, crazy every night. Tomorrow I'm going to board it all up with nails, to hell with it." "But it locks with a key," my mother said, surprised. "There it is, lying on the floor. What's the problem with locking it with the key and not leaving it in the keyhole?" It was as if a light bulb went on in my father's head. He went to the closet and looked it over again. He turned the key and then put it on a shelf in the hallway. "There, now it won't open. Now go to sleep, quick. You have school tomorrow." "But Dad, it's the weekend tomorrow." "I don't care. Sleep." I turned to the wall unhappily. My father turned off the light, and he and my mother left the room. I tried to fall asleep, and thank God, by about 3 in the morning, I managed to. In the morning, I found the closet door open, and the key was still on the shelf in the hallway. I couldn't explain it in my little head. It was impossible. But things only got worse. My parents seriously started to think I was a sleepwalker and that I was the one walking around in my sleep, breaking dishes, and opening the closet. The paranormal phenomena in our apartment increased with each passing night. At first, they were harmless. Doors opening, dishes falling, water turning on by itself in the bathroom and kitchen. But soon, these same phenomena became life-threatening. One night, I clearly smelled gas in my room. All the windows were closed because it was cool outside. Judging by the smell, the concentration was high enough that a small spark would have been enough for our apartment, and several others, to simply disappear along with their inhabitants. I remembered from school what to do in such cases. I opened the windows in my room and the kitchen. The gas needed to be turned off, but I didn't know how. I had to wake my parents. Once again, I was the one who got in trouble, and this time it was bad. My father yelled at me and hit me on the head so hard that I fell to the floor. Nothing new. He still thought I was the one who woke up, went and turned on the gas. "Are you crazy? Trying to kill us, you little mutt?" His fist landed squarely on my face. I collapsed to the floor and burst into tears. Thank God my mother intervened. Otherwise he would have beaten me to a pulp right there in the hallway. And that was far from an isolated incident. Just recently, the faucet in the bathroom turned on in the middle of the night, and water started flowing. That had happened before, but this time, the drain was clogged. Soon, the water overflowed, slowly flooding the neighbors below. I still remember the hysterical ringing of the doorbell in the middle of the night. The neighbors knew perfectly well what was going on in our apartment. They knew about my alcoholic parents and their attitude towards their child. They had even called Child Protective Services, but to no avail. My parents would instantly transform the moment they appeared at the door, becoming a model family, calling me Sonny, and boasting about a full refrigerator. All the alcohol was hidden in my room, and they would clean up. But as soon as the authorities left, everything went back to the way it was. Screaming, drinking, scandals. God, how tired I was of it all. And the closet door continued to open at night. My parents didn't react to my words at all and blamed me for all the paranormal phenomena occurring in the apartment. Every evening, I would hear from my father, "Go to bed, now." I had the impression that they understood something was wrong but refused to admit it. It also seemed to me that whatever was living in our closet was trying to evict us from the apartment or harm us in some way. But the things that happened next, I still can't explain. It just doesn't fit in my head. Another night, my parents had been asleep for half an hour. It was actually my dad's snoring that kept me awake. Like clockwork, around 3 in the morning, the closet doors swung open, and I heard someone inside breathing heavily, hoarse, frightening breaths. something similar to what I had when I was sick with a bad cough. It was then that a feeling of unrestrained horror consumed me. I felt with my whole body that someone else was in the room. Following the breaths, the creak of the second closet door echoed, and then the footsteps, the same footsteps I had heard on the second night. I closed my eyes and lay perfectly still, trying with all my might not to reveal my presence to the unknown entity. But it knew I was here. It knew I felt it nearby, and most importantly, that I was not asleep. But what was interesting was that its steps first approached me, then began to move away from the bed. Did it work? I thought then, still trembling with fear, afraid to move. A few seconds later, it opened my bedroom door and left. What the thing that came out of the closet looked like, I, of course, did not see then. For a while, silence reigned in the apartment. But suddenly, it was broken by the creak of my parents' bed. Instantly, fast footsteps echoed in the hallway, as if someone was running. The old floorboards made every step clearly audible. I risked turning over to the other side. Half of my body had gone numb, and I couldn't lie like that any longer. The door to my room was open, and that's when I saw who was roaming the corridor. I saw it and froze in place like a statue. I was shaking as if I had been thrown out naked into the winter frost. Near the door to my parents' bedroom stood something that resembled a person, but was not. In the darkness, I could only see a hunched silhouette reaching for the doorknob. Its head seemed unusually long, with a particularly prominent sharp chin. Long, sparse hair hung from its head like ropes, and bony, rotten hands reached for the doorknob. The closet dweller entered my parents' bedroom, and my mother's blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. But it was short-lived, cut off in a matter of seconds, replaced by the roar of the creature that had come out of the closet. Then, I heard a crunch from the same room, so distinct it sounded like someone breaking a dry branch. It was then that I realized my childhood ritual had gotten out of control. I just wanted my father to be kinder to me, for him and my mother to stop drinking, yelling at me, hitting me for every little thing, and locking me in my room. I just wanted a normal relationship, like all the other kids, like my classmates and friends from the yard. I myself had summoned something otherworldly, performing a ritual I found on the internet, hoping it would help me. But what it was doing to my parents that night was a living nightmare. I saw everything through the doorway of my parents' room. I saw how the unknown expletive lifted my mother's convulsing body and slammed her head against the wall with all its might, splattering the entire room with blood, skull fragments, and pieces of brain. Her body instantly stopped moving, and the expletive threw it into the corner of the room like a sack of garbage. My father's fate was no better than my mother's. He must have woken up, still drunk, not from my mother's scream but from the impact of her head against the wall. I saw him jump out of bed in confusion, and then the expletive grabbed him too. My father screamed, his voice echoing through the entire apartment as he realized what kind of monster stood before him. His screams were so heart-wrenching that I covered my ears in fear. My father's fate was already sealed. I even thought about getting out of bed to help him somehow, but what could I do? A boy who had recently wet his bed in fear. And at that moment, a primal terror paralyzed me so much that getting out of bed was impossible. My father's scream turned into a gurgle as the creature held him by the neck, as if savoring his agony. But his suffering soon ended. It placed its huge, bony palm on his face and crumpled it like a piece of paper, tearing it from his head and exposing his skull. A torrent of blood gushed onto the walls, and my father's still twitching body fell to the floor. The creature then grabbed him by the leg and, staggering, dragged him into my room. I pressed myself even deeper into the bed. Suddenly, I felt something heavy fall on me, once, and then a second time. A warm liquid trickled down my face. I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs, but the fear was so strong I couldn't even breathe properly. It had thrown the bodies of my murdered parents onto my bed, as if in a report of a job well done. Then the footsteps stopped, and the closet door closed with a creak. And I lay there until morning, in a blood-soaked bed, covered with the corpses of my parents. I was afraid that if I moved or allowed myself to escape, it would immediately crawl out of the closet, and I would meet the same fate. When the sun finally rose and the apartment became light, I managed, with difficulty, to get out of bed. The sight made me vomit right there. Everything I had seen at night was now before my eyes, much more clearly. My bed was almost completely red. Pieces of my mother's head were scattered all over the room. My father's bare skull lay against the wall, staring at me with empty eye sockets. I had a hysterical fit and ran out of the apartment, just as I was, covered in blood and tears. A neighbor called the police and an ambulance. The police tried to talk to me all day, but I couldn't explain anything coherently. Only a few years later did I decide to tell the whole story. What the police decided, I don't know. Child Protective Services placed me in an orphanage, and I'm still here. They treat me well here. The caregivers are good, the kids are good, my friends. I started to stutter and became afraid of every rustle at night. No psychologist has been able to help me. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Never, ever try to contact the supernatural world, and especially don't ask for anything from those who dwell there. Because they exist. I am living proof of that.